This is a fine-looking ship. That recessed central flight deck nestled between the long port and starboard hulls, which house a pair of proportionally oversized engines at the rear and then run right to the front of the ship like a pair of arms waiting to grab your target. This is the Mamba from Zorgon Peterson. Actually, when I say that the engines are at the rear, that's not entirely accurate. It's probably more accurate to say that the engines start at the rear and then run a third of the way up through the hulls. These engines are absolutely huge in comparison to the rest of the ship, which isn't surprising really, since the ancestry of this ship goes back to prototype racing ships. It's claimed in some circles that the Mamba was released in 3304, but it wasn't, at least from what I can tell. The Mamba actually goes back to 3110, starting life as a variety of non-standard custom racing ships, but later being taken on by Radler and Rayburn shipyards who standardised the design while adding a modest cargo hold. Fast forward a few years and the design ended up in the hands of Zorgon Peterson, who in 3126 became incorporated into Fulton de Lacy's portfolio as a subsidiary, through Fulton de Lacy doing what they do best and buying out manufacturers with successful ships in their line. There's nothing concrete, but I'd speculate that the Mamba was made obsolete after Zorgon Peterson got their hands on the design, since they wanted to focus on selling one line of bounty hunting vessels, and the FDL made more sense, since the Mamba would need retrofitting of a hyperspace drive to give it the legs needed by the more discerning bounty hunter. However, going forward a few more years, and after the Fulton de Lacy merger, Zorgon Peterson now had a dedicated following and a reputation and were able to re-release the Mamba, with all of the necessary modifications to bring it up to spec, sharing components with the FDL where possible to save money on the production line. Or something like that anyway. So either this is a modern reimagining of the original Mamba, or it's the Mamba Mark II. There's also a rumour that once Zorgon Peterson were done pushing this design onto the assembly line, they didn't stop working on it, that they carried on after hours and off the record, working on a lighter, potentially faster but less armed version called the Mamba Light. Details on this are scarce and not much more than hearsay, but it's rumoured that the central hull is longer on this variant and that it contains some truly next level tech. Anyway, speculation aside, where were we? This ship looks bloody excellent. Out of the 4 ships currently available from Zorgon Peterson, this one is the looker in my opinion. It's the sort of design that you'd imagine as a picture on the wall of an aspiring bounty hunter to be early in life. I can already smell the die-hard FDL lovers forming an orderly queue to put me in my place, but as I've said before, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and in this instance, I'm the beholder, so I'm going to say that I'm right, you're wrong, and sorry, not sorry, and all that. The interior also has one thing going for it over the FDL. It has a central seating position for both the pilot and the co-pilot, which is a huge plus in my opinion. Although if we're going to nitpick, the forward hulls do obstruct some visibility, but on the other hand, the canopy frames are fairly unobtrusive. Looks aside, what's this ship good for? It could be made to be lightning fast in a straight line with excellent acceleration and the ability to stop on a dime. Manoeuvrability could do with a little bit more work, but it's good enough for flipping with flight assist off and keeping the pressure on while retreating. But if you're planning on keeping on the tail of a vulture, you're probably best to look elsewhere. Exploration is a bit of a weak spot if you need the long jump range, since the frameshift drive feels undersized for the size of the ship. Maximum size for the FSD is a size 4, and just to put that into perspective, a size 4 FSD is a drive that can fit in several small ships like the Cobra and the Viper Mark IV, and whilst it's fine in those ships and even excellent in other ships, it does mean that the jump range in the Mamba leaves a lot to be desired. Also, with a total cargo potential of less than 70 tons, for the money it doesn't exactly make you want to hop in it and start trading or mining for that matter. If I had 55 million to spend on a medium ship for both combat and hauling, I wouldn't go for the Mamba, I'd go for the Python. But then the Mamba was never marketed as an all-rounder. It's marketed as a fast bounty hunter, which is a job that the Mamba can excel at. It's one of the 2 medium ships that has a huge hardpoint for maximum happy murder times, and it also has slots for 2 small and 2 large hardpoints to go with that. Basically, it's a ship where you rock up, unleash hell on your target and zoom off before they get a shot in. Then you rinse and repeat until boom time. Basically, it's a bit like its reptilian namesake, fast and venomous, although it can get a little warm inside with certain loadouts, but you can engineer around that if you have the materials. It's worth mentioning though that for the cost of the Mamba you could also buy the Fer-de-Lance, which has slightly lowered potential damage output but has better numbers for manoeuvrability despite being slower. You also get the option of a huge hardpoint, and instead of the 2 large and 2 small, you get an arguably more balanced complement of 4 medium hardpoints. On paper, this equates to a lower DPS, but in reality, with the improved manoeuvrability, you're more likely to get shots on target, which makes up the shortfall. The Mamba, on the other hand, is better at running to and from targets in a straight line. Basically, the mantra of the Mamba should be meet, yeet, and retreat. Meet the enemy, yeet the ammunition into them, and retreat in order to prepare for another assault. Comparisons between the Mamba and the FDL, I think, is something that most pilots will do naturally at some point. The 2 ships have a lot of similarities, right down to the paintwork that Zorgon Peterson sells them with. Speaking of paintwork, the Mamba does have a reasonable number of paint jobs available if you want to go and make it your own, and there are some ship kits, although the Raider ones don't really go with the whole sleek aesthetic that the rest of the ship goes for. But horses for courses, I guess. Money can't buy taste after all. The Mamba isn't good at many things, but it is good at doing what it's designed to do. But even so, it's not the best in the price range. It sits in the shadow of the FDL for many pilots for the primary purpose. But that's not a reason to not buy this ship. If anything, it's a reason to buy it, then modify the hell out of it to make the best ship that it can possibly be. Zorgon Peterson may have reimagined the Mamba, but in doing so they also made sure that the FDL was the ship that pilots would talk about over a Levy and Brandy instead. They made the Mamba the ship for the slightly weird pilots, the eccentrics who will endlessly tune and fettle, in the hopes that they can get the FDL pilots to say, "Do you know what I saw yesterday? A Mamba doing things in combat that I didn't expect. Maybe I should get one and work on it too." And even if that day never happens, if you buy a Mamba, you'll know that you're out there in one of the best looking ships in the galaxy. And that surely has to say something. If you made it this far, then thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Usual spiel about if you could like, sub, comment, share, subscribe, all of that stuff, it is all very much appreciated, and I will catch you on the next video. I'm not entirely sure what ship I'll be reviewing next, so if you've got any requests, let me know. Although I will be saving the Corvette and the Cutter for a little bit later down the line, as those 2 are going to take quite a lot of time to put together. All of that aside, I hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll hopefully catch you on the next video. 07.